Okay, I don't. That
Okay.
wasn't. That
That
was
was
still
totally good
off.
enough.
But
It was connected on my end.
okay,
Wait and see.
Great.
all right. Hopefully
I'm
that
sure it was
works out.
fine.
Just sync mine up slightly beforehand. Anyway, hello everybody. You thought this channel was fucking dead. It's not. Welcome back to
Yeah,
Bangers, Bops, and
this
Banter.
one's gonna revive it.
It is. It will be. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Welcome back, everyone, to Bangers, Bops, and Banter. I don't know what episode this is, because it's been
Ooh.
like a year and a half at least.
Yeah.
2
an
years.
episode.
2 and
Well, that was since we did one with you. I don't remember
Oh,
when
sorry, yeah, I forgot. It's
I
not
don't
about me.
remember when our last episode of this was, but it's been a long time, and we're back. Because we decided we wanted to make an episode, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because our good friend of the show, Jonah, is here. Who wanted to do a podcast, and we're
me.
like, yeah, that sounds like fun.
Mhm.
I'm one of your hosts, Joe, and we also have Brendan.
Hi, I'm the other host, Brendan. Wow, it's been a while. Good to be back hosting.
And
And
I guess Jonah, you can introduce yourself too.
yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, and you're
I don't even need an introduction. Like, all the fans know me. Like, I know everyone was in the comments being like, "When's Jonah going to be back on?" And now I'm here, and it's great to be back. And I'm just trying to give the fans what they want. And I'm ready to talk about American Sniper and the music we were going to talk about too. So
Yeah,
let's just get
It's
ready.
episode 72, by the way. I just looked it up.
it's what?
Episode 72. This is
Oh my
episode
god!
72 of the
Holy crap!
podcast.
Wow, episode 72.
Wow.
The last podcast episode was uploaded on November 10th, 2022.
Holy shit! Yeah, so it's been a year and a half.
Fuck.
Wow,
Good lord.
It's been a while.
it's been a while. Everyone was clamoring for us to come back, so.
That's true. That's true.
Well,
Everybody said that they loved us
yes. Well,
in our 5 videos a year.
yeah, all our podcasts got like 2 views, so.
That's true.
We have an album and a movie we're talking about today. The album is Advaitic Songs.
Advaitic
Songs. Advaitic Songs
Mhm.
by Ohm. And then afterwards, we're gonna have a cool discussion on American Sniper, a movie we watched. We could have not watched it and just talked about it, which would have been funny, but
I mean, yeah, that would be funny too. I mean, as long as you read the Wikipedia article, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I skimmed it in preparation for this discussion as a refresher.
That's more
and
than
I probably could have gotten away with just the Wikipedia article, because the movie, I mean, spoiler alert, it kind of sucked. I'll be completely real with you guys.
Yeah.
And the Wikipedia page was a lot shorter and a lot less offensive on the eyes and the senses, like the movie was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start with Advaitic Songs by Ohm. Jonah, you wanted to talk about this album. Would you just like to introduce the band and the album?
Yeah. So Sleep. You all know Sleep, right? The legendary stoner metal band, doom metal band. They broke up, and the bassist Alcis Cisneros and the drummer Emil something or other, they formed their own band, Ohm, right? And so their early songs were basically like if Sleep was just a drummer and a bassist, right? And I'll admit, it was still pretty good, right? I think the rhythm section was the best part of Sleep, right? And so it was like Sleep more refined, right? And they had a really good, a bunch of really good songs, right? But with Emil's godlike drumming, and you had Al's really, bass, heavy distortion, got the riffs and stuff. And then slowly over time, right, they started to move away from the Sleep style of metal into kind of a more spiritually themed sort of direction, right? And they had more instrumental stuff. They got violins and chanting, and they're sampling shit, and they have some dude with a tambourine doing stuff. And then Advaitic Songs is kind of is kind of at the end of that journey in 2012, where it's almost unrecognizable to their early stuff, right? So you still have Al's bass, and you've got Emma on the drums, but the sound is now completely dominated by like these samples of like these vocal chantings, and then like a cello and violins and whatnot, right? So again, it has a like an Eastern Orthodox rendition of what is it of John the Baptist, right? As a lot of their songs do, with like these Christian imagery, but really like the spiritual element pulls from like a bunch of different places. They got like Hindu stuff and like Sifu stuff and like Buddhist themes. It's like kind of all over the place, right? And Advaitic Songs is just kind of the culmination of all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting album. I think we'll jump into the discussion right away. This album, this is a much more atmospheric record than a lot of Sleep, or maybe not atmospheric isn't right, because a lot of Sleep stuff is already very atmospheric, very like vibey, but I definitely think this is a lot more chill. It's a lot more relaxing, I'd say, than Sleep's stuff is. And there isn't nearly as much emphasis on a lot of the bass and like a lot of like the riffs and stuff that are that's happening. It feels a lot more calm, and I think that's very nice. Like, I really enjoy it as kind of a nice vibe, and but as an album experience of me just like going and listening to a record, I do find I prefer Sleep stuff a lot more, just because it feels a lot more active to me. Like it feels like there's quite a bit more going on in terms of like the compositions, whereas this is very like relaxed, very laid back, which is nice. Like, it's still like really enjoyable. I just don't think it grabs me as much as a lot of Sleep stuff does.
Yeah, I get that, and part of it too is like Sleep is such a legendary band that like when you find out that like some of their members went and did their own thing, you kind of like want to have the same level of impact as like Sleep stuff, and then when it doesn't live up to that insanely high standard, it's like, okay, well, great, you know. But yeah, no, I agree, especially with like the bass guitar and the distortion. Like, a lot of Sleep was just that super distorted like metal sludgy sound right up front in your face, like grabbing your attention, right? Like, that's just like completely gone, right? Like that's like what made Sleep so engaging, in my opinion. It's like the up in your face riffs, and now it's like, nope, gone. Sorry, you know, we're doing something different now.
It's interesting, and I don't know. I don't feel that like it's fair really to compare it to Sleep. I understand there's lots of overlap, but it's definitely not trying to be a Sleep-like thing. Sure, there are similarities where this album especially, I haven't listened to the earlier work. I'm not as familiar with the bands, but this album especially, like, yes, it lets tracks breathe, build, take their time, but that, I don't know, I would maybe even hardly classify this album as like metal, because it is just so different. It is very much more spiritual, atmospheric. There's lots of kind of this vocal chanting, Gregorian chant stuff. I don't know. And because of that, I do think it is like, it's definitely distinct from Sleep. Sure, there's similarities with maybe the composition and the way that they let things build, breathe, and kind of expand, but still definitely its own thing, its own sound. And I do definitely appreciate that. I think it's a unique sound, cool sound. It's maybe, I think Joe's on the right track. It's maybe a little bit too atmospheric, right? Where
it gets drony
a little bit.
Yeah. it's very it's in some ways I think it's closer to like ambient stuff than it is to like
Mhm.
sleep. And I think I will say admittedly I do think that I was expecting something different going in, both because it's members of Sleep, but also I do think I assume it was like the main single for it, but State of Non-Return I think is
Mhm.
pretty similar to a lot of Sleep stuff compared to the rest of the record, which is not nearly as like metal-y. Like that State of Non-Return specifically reminds me a lot of Sleep, whereas the rest of it is much more like um
Yeah,
I guess
no,
atmospheric.
atmospheric. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think it's not a coincidence that "State of None Return" is the most popular Ohm song of all time. It is like
Mm-hmm.
probably the best on the album, if not like it's the best song that like the band's put out, right? And I think it strikes like the right balance between like the spiritual stuff with the opens with that soft piano and like
Mm-hmm.
some percussion, and then it hits you with the rolling Cisneros bass, and it's like you can't help but like, at least for me, it's like when I heard that when I first discovered off of Spotify, I'm going through their top five, right, and it's number one is like State of Non-Return, and I'm like, this is sick, right, and
Mm-hmm.
then like I want more of that,
Yeah.
like I like the riffs, I like the spiritual element, like kind of the cool cello and shit, and then it's just like you don't really get into that. It's kind of like you're baited
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. I think it's also with so I watched an interview with I think it was like a decade ago, around the time that this album came out in preparation for the episode, and Al Cisneros was talking about like what people's expectations were for
Mm-hmm.
and he said that people who try to listen to expecting more sleep, quote, had no lives. So maybe we should kind of take a
That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. I can.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, I definitely understand where he's coming from, and just like the frustration of like trying to do something different but being tied to previous work.
Mhm.
Um.
yeah. I think this like as a project is kind of like Al and Emil's chance to like or their attempt to like mature more as musicians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like with I'm not trying to shit on Sleep by any means, right? But like I think a lot of Sleep's work was very again up in your face, like youthful, like energetic, you know, and a lot of it too was about like transcendental experiences through smoking weed, right? Like Dope
Mm-hmm.
Smoker, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the running theme of like their album art and stuff. And then they're trying to move on from that to just like transcendental experiences, like
Mm-hmm.
flat out,
Yeah.
and trying to be more subtle and more sophisticated, right? And then it's like, I think when they hear people like trying to compare them to the older stuff, it's like, no, 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 like we're past that. We're trying to
Yeah.
be better than that, I guess. But they're not like, I mean, I still kind of prefer Sleep Sound a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't know if they are truly successful in that goal of like building on what they did before with Sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah.
Do you want to go through and just like track by track? I wrote down some notes for all of them. Was that what
Um.
we did last time?
I think so. I didn't end up taking notes, but we can
Yeah,
definitely.
that's one of the
Okay.
albums.
If you
I
wanted
don't
to
know.
share like specific things about each track, go
Oh,
for it.
well, I mean, I wrote
I
down some
think.
notes. I've
Yeah.
also listened to this album like a billion times, so I'll just like add some more
I,
specific stuff to say.
yeah.
Yeah,
I.
so the first song, oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I will say that this is like
Mm-hmm.
to me this reads much more as just kind of like an album experience where you just kind of put it on
Oh,
and like
yeah.
tracks kind of feel like they bleed into each other a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas
I
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get it. In my mind mentally, when I listen to it, I kind of divide it into the halves of like before and after State of Non-Return, because that's like the strongest part of the album. It's like, okay, this part, and then State of Non-Return happens, and then it's like the rest of the album,
Mm-hmm.
they all kind of blends together. But yeah, it's like, so it starts out with Addis, right? Which is just the first like half of it is just a re-recording of like an ancient like Hindu chant. You got this woman saying stuff, and it's kind of your first tip off that this is not like this is not a Sleep album, right? Because I remember listening to it for the first time. It's like the chanting, and it's just the chanting, right? It goes, and then it goes, and then it goes, and then it goes, and then by the end of the fourth time, like if you've listened to a song before and you just have like a general sense of rhythm, you're like, okay, it's like after the fourth time repeating this chant, then something else is supposed to come in, right? You know, and then it happens again and again and again, and you're like, okay, like is the song all just chanting, and then you have the drums come in, and then the cello and stuff, and the instrumentals, and it almost goes on for once too long. Even when I'm listening to it now, it's like, okay, like we can get to the actual music now. Like the Hindu stuff is cool, but it's like it overstays its welcome just a little bit. And then you get to State of Non-Return, which is like soft piano and like a tambourine, and then it goes into Al Cisneros' heavy bass, and Emil is just like doing like incredible things with the drums. The music video for this song is just them playing this like the song in a studio, right? And it's like kind of crazy watching this guy just like go at it. He's like doing, I don't know, kind of all over the place. And then it like, so they have like a round of bass, and then Al Cisneros like sings some stuff, and then it goes back, does the bass thing again, they sing some stuff, and then it wraps up with this kind of like a very, I guess, kind of like emotional violin and cello at the end. It's probably the strongest part of the album in general. It's the catchiest, right? And it's the closest thing we have to an actual like metal song.
Yeah.
This is like the last shred of metal that like Ohm has. It feels like, and then like that's it. Pretty much.
It's definitely the most memorable song. Like I can like picture it in my head.
Yeah, and then again the rest gets the mean. Al Aquin and all that just kind of, it really all kind of like sludges together. I will say that it's like, I mean, it is, it's pleasant, I guess. Like it doesn't really stick out. Like I don't know, maybe it's like I'm not familiar enough with like music to really describe like what these songs are, but it really is just like, it's like a pleasant listening experience. You've got some drums, but they aren't really like up front, and then the bass is usually very low. I can't like sometimes like depending on what I'm listening to it on, like I can't even hear what Al is playing. It's just like pieces of the song are just missing, and then like a lot of cello and the violin and these like instrumental elements, and it kind of makes me want to fall asleep. I'll be honest, and that's exactly how it finishes up. It has like this kind of, it's like a wet sounding like drum thingy. I don't know how to describe it. The instrument that they're using, and then it wraps up with just that, just kind of going over and over again, and it slowly fades into nothing, and that's usually when I fall asleep around. Yeah, and the most like when I look over just like my notes for all the songs, a lot of it. I mean, I mentioned vibes a couple times, but it's like, it really is like all. It's like, it's almost like you get a taste of metal, and then it's just kind of world music after that. It's like world music for metal fans. That's kind of how I describe it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Excuse me. And it's like I respect Al and Emil's like decision to try and be more spiritual and more like sophisticated with their sound. But they pull from so many influences at the same time, it almost feels like that undermines what they're trying to do, right? Like, it would be one thing if they just did like an Eastern Orthodox sort of theming with the lyrics and the imagery and maybe the sound, but they're trying to pull from all sorts of different things, right? No, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does kind of like unless you like are like into it, or you like get it after a bunch of listens, or you've kind of know about the history of as a band and what they're trying to go for, it can feel like sort of cheap, right? Especially for guys who used to be part of a band that was like, okay, like what if we wrote a song about like an astronaut whose spacesuit was filled with weed smoke? It's like, okay, like you don't expect those guys to go and do like some super serious spiritual stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think it comes off as cheap at all, but I would say it maybe comes off as like kind of like meandering in a way, where it's like it's like there isn't as much direction in it as maybe in Sleep there is. I will say again, I think I said at the start, but this is a vibes album. You kind of have it on, and then like if I put this on and then got really high, I think I would be like having a good time. So.
Oh yeah, it's I know like all music sounds better when you're high, like almost all, but it really does feel amazing when you're high. Like, I think I might have told you, Joey, already, but I was trip sitting for some friends while they drank mushroom smoothies, and I put this on their TV with the speakers, and we just had like a good time listening to this album. And that's how I got my friend into listening to Ohm. And it really is like you're in the right state of mind, shall we say. It really is like a spiritual experience, right? But it doesn't, that also, like it's almost like a backhanded compliment, right? Because it's almost like, okay, then when you're sober, right, it doesn't really live up to that kind of spiritual experience, right? You have to be a little intoxicated, or a little nudged in that, right, in that direction. Yeah.
I don't know. I still think it's good even while sober. I don't know. It also my thing about this album, I guess, is that like it neither of you have played Mountain Blade, right? But it makes me it just it feels like I'm playing Mountain Blade when I listen to it, because it's like the same kind of music. Well, the Mountain Blade music like isn't the greatest or anything, but it's like the same. It's similar. I don't know how to describe it, but I was just like
the guy who's only ever listened to the Mountain Blade OST, listening to any other kind of music. Hey, this kind of reminds me of the Mountain Blade OST.
No, but it does. I don't know. I was just like, damn, I can really play some Mountain Blade right now.
All right.
I mean, maybe we will.
Right now, fire it up right now. Oh, the podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna turn this into a gameplay channel.
Do you think anyone's gotten this far in the video? Of course not. Just start playing Mountain.
No. Okay. Shit.
I mean, it would be nice to have that in the background, right? Like we'll have that going, Mountain Blade, and then you're like killing peasants or something, or whatever doing Mountain Blade, and then you have like the commissioned rant-sonas of the three of us, in like kind of in front of the gameplay, changing hand positions while we talk, and that's the video.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
All right.
I do.
Well, let's wrap up our discussion. Are we doing scores? Do we care? We can do.
This is like it's an 8 out of 10, in my opinion. I
think for me it's like a 7. It's like good. I'm sorry. But it's a good record, but it's not something I'm gonna be like going back to unless I'm in a certain state of mind. So, but yeah, this is definitely really enjoyable.
Brendan.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
I don't know. I'm also in the 8 out of 10 boat. I think it's good. I think it's solid. It's maybe a little bit too Mountain Blade-y though. I don't know. But yeah, I do like it. I think it's fun to put on, and I would recommend it. At least.
Yeah, I would recommend it.
So I'd recommend.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased. This is like my favorite band ever, so I kind of like have to ride their dick a little bit. But yeah, I think it's worth noting that these guys do have like a small but very, very, very passionate fan base that, again, just like ride their dick in every comment section of every music video or of every review of their album. Like Anthony Fantano reviewed this, he gave it like a 5.5 out of 10, and there were just people in the comments like tearing him to shreds. And so 4 months ago, I think it was Emil was like, "Oh yeah, like we're making a new album and it's almost done mixing," and that was 4 months ago. So we might see Ohm. It's been a decade since this came out, so who knows? Stay tuned for possible future Ohm episodes in the future.
Yeah.
With that,
Who knows?
I think I'm ready to talk about American Sniper
All
for this
right.
episode.
Yeah.
Joe, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, we'll transition into our movie we watched, American Sniper, directed by Clint Eastwood, starring Rocket Raccoon.
Yep.
This movie's really bad. This movie's like really bad. Like I was shocked
So
at how
bad.
bad it was. Genuinely shocked. I apologize for the coughing. I peaked the audio really bad. But this okay. This movie goes beyond just like a pro-war movie. This is just propaganda. This is just U.S. military propaganda.
Oh yeah. Totally.
But
So
I would just like the I guess for anyone unaware, somehow this movie follows Chris Kyle, who's or it's based on his life. Loosely, I'm going to add because
it's based on a book that
yeah.
was based on his life.
So based on his life as in written by him, I think.
Yeah.
It was written by him, but I don't know.
Also, we should note like Chris Kyle. Say a lot of things about Chris Kyle. He lied a ton.
Yes, I was going.
Sorry. I want to talk about.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was in class, and we had an hour left and nothing to do. So me and my friend just got on the Chris Kyle Wikipedia page, and just read through all the stuff, and it was like he says he has double the amount of kills that the Navy says he does.
Yeah.
And it was also like during Hurricane Katrina, I got on top of this football stadium and I sniped looters.
Yeah, he's claimed
killed looters, which is code for black people, by the way. Just context. And then he was also like, I was robbed at a gas station, and they shot at me, and the cops were like no, like that never happens. Like,
oh no, it wasn't that they shot at him.
About?
It's that he killed both of them. Both the people tried to rob him.
Oh.
Yeah, and the cops were like, "We did not have any report." Yeah, he also claimed he had more medals than he did, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was like, but to his credit, it was like 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, it's just like weird to lie about it.
Like you're the American Sniper, like it's okay, you know.
Yeah, it's okay that you only have like 6 medals. Like why? And that was also that is, I think, throws a lot of the movie into question, where it's like, it makes it a lot harder to believe he acted the way he did, but also, just like, I don't know, it makes him out to be like a good person, and I don't think he was.
No, definitely. Like, he was like a lot of some parts of this movie was like the part of the 2 biggest moments in the movie was like I had like one was like I killed this kid, but I had to kill this kid, and then another high point of the movie was like I almost killed this kid, but like I could have killed this kid, and then if I had killed the kid, it would have been like okay. So that's just like to kind of put that in reference. This is the level that we're on with Chris Kyle and how he's portraying himself. God.
Yeah. Brendan, did you? I feel like you had something to say earlier.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, like, I don't know if this movie is like straight up propaganda.
I would argue it is.
Um, I couldn't see that. I think that like I'm conflicted on it. I'll say I don't like the movie, right? But like I want to try and give it credit, I guess, because I want to see it as like, because I think it tries to kind of portray Kyle as this, not as just a good guy, as someone who is like trouble and like he comes back and is like he comes back from war as just like a terrible person, right? And like definitely not, maybe I don't know. But then he like gets better and it's weird. Like the thing is, my biggest problem with this movie is that it doesn't ever get that deep into anything. It just like if there's something, it just like kind of brushes it away within like 5 minutes.
That's one of my things with it is like even the times where it's like, oh, there are like consequences to soldiers, killing people in war. It basically
Yeah.
like sweeps them away and it's like, nah, he just got better because he hung out with his
I,
like army buddies,
yeah.
essentially.
And it's like, or he got better by going back to war, which is also like,
which is
I don't
insane.
know.
Yeah.
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 I want to compare this to the movie The Hurt Locker, basically, just as contrast. Which I'm not like a huge fan of The Hurt Locker, but it's all right. It has a lot of problems, and The Hurt Locker is a movie that I would describe as pro-war, but the way in which it's pro-war to me is distinct from American Sniper, where The Hurt Locker, is a movie that is trying to portray how soldiers essentially get a high from being in stressful situations. It's like addicting. And in the way in which the Hurt Locker has like other issues beyond this, but the way in which it fails is that it never contextualizes anything that's going on. So by the end of the movie, it feels like, or the audience gets the impression that this is a terrible thing that soldiers have to do, but it's necessary. Like it is kind of required. But when you're watching the guy in the Hurt Locker try to defuse bombs, it's not fun. Like it's really fucking stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows him getting just like essentially getting adrenaline rush off of it, and like nothing quite compares to that. With American Sniper, all of like the intense scenes, it's just a Call of Duty like cutscene essentially. Literally, it's just like hundreds of brown people being gunned down with like no thought to it. This movie also looks like complete shit. I'm gonna mention
Yeah.
it is horribly shot.
Yeah.
A lot of it is very standard looking, which would be like fine, but then there are often weird cuts that are jarring and just not good. Like just like poor cuts. Like the editing is not great in this movie, but also it looks brown. There's clearly like color correction going on to make things look brown in a way
Which
that
is-
makes it
I-
look.
It's so
It-
funny that you say that because that's like what Modern Warfare 2 did. It's literally Call of Duty. It's literally Call of Duty.
Yeah, no, it's like it literally like there's filters and everything to make things look like brown and ugly, but not in a way that is visually interesting. I'm gonna compare it to the Hurt Locker again because the Hurt Locker is kind of similar in that it does look like it's brown and kind of like ugly looking, but the way that the Hurt Locker is shot, I don't know what is like the difference, but the Hurt Locker, just like the fidelity of the shot, like it looks a lot more real. I think a lot of it is because a lot of the shots are like handheld and from interesting angles, but also just because of the more like interesting cinematography in that movie, it looks far more like realistic. I can take it seriously. This movie looks like they're on sets most of the time.
Yeah.
Things look fake. And not in a way that's like understandable. or like it's hard to pick out. Like literally, like looking at some shots, like I swear to God, it looks like it was in a studio on like a set, and like they're all props. Um, this movie also, oh my God, so there's one part of, oh, there's so much terrible stuff in this movie. Why does he have a Pokemon sniper like rival? It's like
That part I
It's the
hated.
series.
Like the
it's
weird
why,
rival thing.
and the way he never talks, but you see him like doing epic parkour over buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
As he's like,
I thought that was so funny when I saw that. I think that's also like the missed opportunity too of like they could have had this sniper, unnamed sniper from Syria, I guess, who's like it's kind of like it implied that like jihadis are coming from all over the globe to try and like stop the
yeah,
forces of good, and but they could have made like the Syrian sniper like the brown guy's Chris Kyle, and they could have like had some kind of comparison between the two, like, oh, this guy's got a family too, and but then they just have him be a Pokemon villain. I'd say the one redeeming factor thing that I got from the Pokemon sniper guy is that like a lot of the movie is just him trying to be like, I gotta kill the sniper, right? I gotta kill the Syrian guy, and then when he does, it's not like a triumphant thing. He kills him, and he's like, whew, and then he just like fucks over his entire squad, and they're saved by like a sandstorm out of nowhere, right?
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of like that's kind of a message, right? But it's also like not. It doesn't really. It kind of falls flat, you know.
Yeah, I would agree, especially because it does like the sniper elite slow mo zoom in on the guy's head exploding when like he makes the shot. It just goes slow mo and follows like the bullet, and it's like it's so bad, especially because like it's not like there's no emotional connection whatsoever with any character in this movie because the characters are all poorly written and uninteresting. But especially that there's like is potential for like an interesting contrast or point between like the satisfaction he gets from killing this guy and like the consequences of him doing that and potentially like just like fucking over his entire squad, which no one actually dies for the record
Yeah.
in that
They
scene.
should have had
Like I said,
all
it never
his
gets that
boys get killed. Like they should have
Yeah.
had all of his guys get killed.
I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
that like it's
No.
based on his book, so like obviously there's like I understand the desire to maybe like try to keep it close to quote unquote reality, but still like you have an opportunity to make a point and you just completely it fell on its face.
Yeah. Like I said, it never gets that deep. Everything is resolved in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
it's just
I also have to say because Chris Kyle died in 2013. So he died before the movie came out, and I was like, because I had read his Wikipedia page, and I was like, are they gonna show him being killed by this guy? Towards the end of the movie, I was like, oh
Oh
god.
my god, dude! If I was in Hollywood, right, I'd replace the slow mo sniper elite killing of the Syrian guy with a slow motion shot of like the 45 ACP bullet leaving the veteran's M1911 pistol into Chris Kyle's skull. Like that would have been a lot better of an ending. Just like hyper realistic, just like. But no, they kind of rob us of that.
Yeah.
They kind of do like a fade to black, and like yeah, Chris Kyle got dropped by a guy with an M1911.
Mm-hmm.
He was the American sniper.
Yeah, and I think when looking at this movie, one of the main reasons why I call it propaganda, is because unlike something like The Hurt Locker, there isn't any sense of a genuine like moral conflict or any sense of consequence just because things resolve themselves. It's like, oh, like war messes up veterans, whatever, they just have to hang out together and they'll get better, and like there's no lasting consequence. what was there's something that was there's one part where Chris Kyle is like, oh, we're out here doing a good thing, we're killing bad guys, and then his like the other guy in his unit or whatever, who I don't remember his name and at all, the
Which one?
mustache guy.
Bagels or Mark? One of them, I think.
I don't know. He has a mustache. But he's like, there's bad guys all over the world, like, and that, but like, there's never anything beyond that. Like, it basically, like, that is like protest against Chris Kyle's like worldview is never expanded upon. There's never anything beyond that. And I'd argue in a lot of ways the movie like goes against that.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, it's not like you ever see someone in the US like do something terrible. Do you know what I mean? It's not like he's like, oh, we not like we see like evil people in the US or what, quote unquote evil people. But yeah. There's no yeah.
The only thing you really see is like, I mean, he gets killed by a guy who's also but the movie also doesn't really talk about that. I don't know.
Yeah, and that isn't like linked back to the war in any way, right? It's like, oh yeah, this guy just like had a spat, like he like had PTSD or whatever, but that's not. I don't know. That's not like. It's almost like a random occurrence. It's like they could have said that like an anvil fell on his head and it would have had the same emotional impact.
Yeah, no, literally, like it's just kind of brushed over. It's like weird. All of like the things that you would think have like consequence for him or would lead to some sort of conflict or be something that affects him deeply, they just don't. They kind of brush past them. One of his platoon members, he a bullet like grazes his head and stuff, and he's like gets really like fucked up, and he visits him in the hospital later. He's like alive, and then later he finds out that actually like that guy had died in surgery, and then it just goes on. Like there isn't anything beyond.
Never mentions him again.
Never
gives another thought.
Yeah. He does there's like a funeral for Mustache Man, and it's like,
oh yeah, there is.
And then then after that they never like think about him again. It's like his wife is worried because she doesn't want him to die, like his friend did, but that's kind of it, and that gets resolved because he doesn't die. He doesn't die at war. And she no longer has to worry. Like, it's just fine. Who cares?
Yep.
It's, I think, on the topic of, like, his wife, right? Like, there's a scene where he's back home, and his kids are playing and shit, and he's just, like, watching the TV, and it's, like, propaganda footage that, like, the Syrian sniper and, like, Al-Qaeda or whatever put out of, like, the sniper just, like, killing American soldiers, and his wife, like, walks into the room, and he quickly just, like, turns off the TV, and he's like, oh, hey, honey. And she doesn't, like, comment on the fact that he was, like, watching, like, propaganda put out by the enemy because he's obsessed with the sniper. She's just like, oh, like, hello, husband, like, completely.
She was like don't worry, I've seen it. All right.
Yeah.
Which is, like, weird. Again, I think there is something really potentially compelling in this story about him basically being addicted to war in like a similar way to like the Hurt Locker kind of goes into. But like it just doesn't do anything with it. I think there's some like I don't know, I think there's a lot. I could remake this movie and make it good. Fuck you, let me write the script for American Sniper 2.
I mean, only if I can beat Chris Kyle.
Right. Absolutely.
Can I just say, sorry, I'm going to get slightly off topic, but the way this movie introduces 9/11 is like the funniest thing to me. Because like it's just like his wife in the other room going, "Oh my god," and he walks in and it's like 9/11 happening. I
And
don't
he's
know.
shirtless, and he's just staring at the TV, and then it just cuts to him going into, like, being deployed or whatever.
Yeah, it's like crazy to me, that scene. It was out of nowhere, and then again, it just never gets talked about again.
Oh my god. I think it's almost like they filmed that with the assumption that like you remember where you were on 9/11, so it's like a shortcut, but like I wasn't there. Like it's funny to me. Like again, like I mean I did, like, don't get me wrong, like I did smoke a pre-roll before watching American Sniper, but I laughed my ass off when 9/11 happened in that movie. It's the
that's
funniest shit.
just in general, I think this movie is really funny, actually.
Yeah,
Like,
like
I laughed a
unintentionally.
lot.
Yeah.
Because it's so, like, all the violence is so impersonal, and it's so, like, it looks like someone's playing Call of Duty. Literally, I mean that so genuinely. And, like, it makes it goofy. Like, people die, and it's funny. The guy whose, like, face gets fucked up, and then, like, later dies on the operating table. We have never, when he, like, gets shot, we go into that scene, and we've never met this person before, and he starts talking about, like, oh, I bought a ring for my wife to propose with. And immediately I was like, he's dying. He's dying.
Yeah.
He's, like, getting shot. We've never met him before, and this person is talking about his wife, or his girlfriend who's about to propose to, with a ring. He is dying, and it's so obvious. Like, everything that happens in this movie is, like, so obvious.
With the ring thing, I remember watching that and being like, go back to World War II. This is the wrong era of movie. Like, that's what, like, come up with an original trope. Like, this is a new war. Come up with, like, come the fuck on. I think there was also a scene with one of the jihadi guys was just like torturing a young child with like a
drill,
driller thing. I was like, I mean, like, I didn't really laugh because it was just like disturbing, but it was kind of funny how over the top, like, because the film was like, this is like we just did that, you know. It's so graphic and like messed up and fucked up. Like, we're so fucked up, and I'm like, what the fuck is even this? Like, that isn't anything. Like,
that entire scene is it's shot really poorly. Like, it's weirdly, like, it feels messy, but not in a way that's very purposeful. Like, it feels just like a mess, and there's no impact to him doing that. And also, all of the blood looks so, like, hilariously fake that when he started to drill the child, I was like, that looks so bad. I couldn't take it seriously because, like, nothing looks real. Nothing feels real, more importantly. Like, it can look fake, but, like, if there is an emotional impact to it, then it's fine. Like, it will still resonate. But, like, nothing hits. Also, as an addition to that, the music is, like, genuinely some of the worst I've ever heard. There's the scene where Chris Kyle kills the child with the grenade, like, he snipes the child. There are these dramatic, like, string notes, these intense strings that just happen, like, consistently to rise the tension, and it's so hilariously, like, manufactured and fake feeling. That scene would be, like, 10 times better if they just got rid of any of the music. Literally.
We could put some Mountain Blade music in there, actually, and I think it was
perfect. Oblivion music.
Yes.
Oh my god.
What if, like, it was like silence, or what if it was like some Indian woman chanting, and then when he snipes the child, then it's like the sickest, like, bass riff you've ever heard.
That'd be
yeah.
cool.
Oh my god.
But yeah, so about that scene specifically, the Wikipedia page said, I believe it was like, according to Chris Kyle, a woman, like, tried to throw a hand grenade at some U.S. soldiers with, like, a kid in her arms. It didn't even play out like he had to shoot the child, like, who was holding the
Oh,
grenade. That was just an exaggeration, because, like, I guess, like, Muslim people are like orcs. That's
they're
kind of
yeah,
what we're going with. And they'll, like, just, like, put a hand grenade on a child
yeah,
to get a couple kills. And it's just, like, totally just, like, gross and,
yeah.
like, stupid. I I think, I forgot where I read it. This might have been, like, a Slavoj Žižek thing, but, like, people who are, like, the deepest into ideology or whatever, like, that they're deep in it when they don't even think of some, like, that ideological belief as being political or ideological in any way. I think, like, the people who made this movie are so, like, lost in the sauce that they don't even, that what they think of being, like, kind of, like, controversial or, like, I don't know, nuanced is actually still, like, in the sauce completely, because they're like, okay, but, like, not all Muslims are orcs. There are, like, two good ones, right? And one of them
No,
is a
those ones also
child.
die though.
What was that?
the bad
The
yeah.
good ones also die though
The
in
the
this
bad
movie.
one
They
the
die,
bad ones
and
killed
they.
the good ones. That's how.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yes. Like,
Um.
there is one good Muslim, and it's like a guy who knows a little English, and then he's rewarded by the rest of the Muslims taking his child and torturing it with a automatic screwdriver. Like, that's just like what
Yeah.
that's how the world works. And they're like, we're being deep and, like, nuanced here, and it's like,
Yeah.
so bad.
Okay. Two things. Firstly, I just want to also mention the guy with the screwdriver. Like Chris Kyle just shoots his vehicle and it explodes, and he, I guess, is dead. It doesn't even show him dying. It's just like the vehicle explodes and you assume he's dead.
Again,
Yeah.
Call of Duty ass sequence.
Yeah, it's
Exploding
hilarious. It isn't
splash
even
damage,
like
yeah.
good or like like a cool explosion. Like it's just like almost off screen. But beyond that, um what was I want to say this movie was directed by Clint Eastwood, who is a libertarian.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
what is like weird to me is that Clint Eastwood has made like some great movies. He directed Unforgiven, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. And that movie is very ideologically driven, but that movie is also like pretty nuanced and interesting, and it is a like a deconstruction of like the like heroic like gunslinger kind of myth in Hollywood. Um but like and like there's a lot of nuance in that movie, and like the character that Clint Eastwood plays. And there's like nothing, like I was at least expecting like a little something in this movie, and there's not. Like there's nothing. It's just like, yeah, the brown people are bad. So we gotta like, that's why we gotta like murder thousands and thousands of them.
I think, well, Joe, we were, like, had a conversation the other day, and we were kind of, like, pre-gaming this discussion. We talked about, like, anti-war movies versus, like, fake anti-war movies or pro-war movies. And, like, I think the difference that we came up with was that, like, anti-war movies are like, this sucks, but it can be different, right? And then fake anti-war movies are like, it sucks that they made us do this, you know? And that's why I think this is the Chris Kyle movie is like, it sucks that the Muslims made us do this. You know, like they did 9/11, so we had to like run in here and kill all of them. Like it's, you know.
Yeah, I think the way I would put it is it's like anti-war is this sucks. This didn't have to happen. Like there is no reason for this. And then pro-war is more, or like movies. A lot of movies that are pro-war are kind of taking the stance of like this sucks and it's necessary. Like it's still like it needs to be done. Which is like kind of where the Hurt Locker falls into. I think that this movie goes beyond that. This is like, this actually is cool, and also, like they made us do this, and also, like this is like awesome. Like it's just it's sick.
Chris Kyle.
Yeah.
It's Chris Kyle. Like, he's the American sniper.
Look
He's
at
the
how
fucking
heroic he is.
American sniper. Yeah, they like the end credits where it's like the parades and shit that they did when he died.
Mhm.
Like, they're
Yeah.
just like jerking him off like for the last like couple minutes of the movie. Like, come on, guys, really.
Yeah.
Just,
And I think also just like what was I? I was gonna say something and I forgot. I apologize.
it's okay. Well, if you
Okay,
think
we
of it,
forgive
just
you.
let me know. Yeah.
Oh, I remembered. We're back.
Yeah.
One thing about this movie is I think there are hints of it, of like this being like more detail or like in depth. Like there's something potentially that it could grasp at. Like there is a part where Chris Kyle is like sitting at home and you kind of got like, you think he's watching TV and there's like gunfire and stuff going on around him, and then you kind of the camera pans around and the TV's blank and just kind of him disassociating. And I do think this movie could have focused a lot more on that. I also think this movie could have, like, it separates his time into each of his tours. I think he's on like 4 tours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there could like, it totally could have done something where like you see him on each subsequent tour as he kind of goes from like someone who is like wants to go to war because he thinks he's defending like America, and he like kind of thinks he has a sense of duty to do that. And like I think the movie does it a little, but it could totally go from that into him just like being excited to like kill people basically. And there's a little like he kind of has a sense of like he's like, oh, I have to do this, like I want to go back. And like, but like it never goes beyond that to say like, no, he just likes killing people, because that's kind of the
Yeah,
impression I got.
and that's
Mhm.
like what like Chris Kyle IRL like was like. He is someone who bragged about having like a hundreds of confirmed kills. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be kind of a psychopath to be doing that. You know,
Yeah.
like obviously something is like wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he is he is a guy. I mean, people join the army for all sorts of reasons, right? But it's like some people just want to like hurt people, and then if you get to go into the army and then do that to people that in a socially acceptable way, then that's what you do. And I think Chris Kyle was that kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm being honest, not like anyone personally, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's like possible. I do like. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, but I would, at least from the movie and what I've read about him, I would read him as someone who genuinely went out of some sort of sense of like duty. But like it seems like he kind of evolved into someone who just enjoyed doing it. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know. This movie's so bad. Oh, the baby! We didn't even mention the baby.
The rubber
rubber
baby?
baby.
It's so good.
I love the rubber baby.
Want to elaborate on that?
You won't elaborate on that?
No, I'm saying you want to elaborate on that.
Oh yeah,
I'm
so
curious what your thoughts are
for
on the rubber baby.
this is like one of the like most famous things about this movie, weirdly enough, but the baby in the movie is just like a doll that they used, and it really looks like a doll. It's very
Mhm.
obvious. Because it's just lifeless. Like it basically doesn't move. And it's like weird. Like I can kind of understand not wanting to use a baby, like a real child, for like one scene, but like still it's like, why wouldn't you shoot it in a different way so you don't show the baby very much? But yeah, I don't know. Cool.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah, it's
It
when
might have been. Yeah.
it's when the wife is like breastfeeding the child, like it's a doll, like it doesn't move.
Okay. All right. I might have been distracted during that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I did smoke a pre-roll before watching it, and the convenience store downstairs sells like Hershey's chocolate with like pronouns on it for Pride Month or something. It's like she, her. So I was eating. I think I was eating like taking a bite of the pronoun chocolate. I missed the breastfeeding scene, the rubber baby. I'm glad I was paying attention during the child drill torture scene though. So,
yeah. Well, that one's important.
I got all the important bits. Yeah. Man, I'm thinking about how much better it would have been if they showed the slow motion scene of Chris Kyle getting his head blown off by the veterans in 1911. I'm just like, I keep coming back. Can't think of any other part of the movie. Like, they really hit us with they gotta have like a director's cut.
It's
or
also
something like that. Please,
so
extended.
It's so obvious what's going to happen when that scene starts. Also, it's like he's like, they're like really happy, and like his wife like loves him, and like everything is perfect, and then she like opens the door, and it's just her staring at this guy, who like honestly is not like, he doesn't seem that off, to be honest. He just seems quiet. Yeah. Wow.
So one note, just while I think about it, like, there's a scene where he's like with the vets or whatever.
Yeah.
And the veterans, I'm pretty sure are like real like veterans of the war, and they have like crazy amputations and shit. And they're like, you can kind of tell because they suck at acting. No offense. Like they like, and they're like, Chris Kyle, the American sniper. I mean, they didn't say the last part, but they're like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you hanging out with us? And he's like, who like support the troops. Like, I'm just trying to help you guys out. And I'm like, that's like pandering, because you get to be like, we got real vets to shoot the scene, and they have like disabilities and shit. And I'm like, kind of rolling my eyes, like, come on, guys. Like, I don't know. It's just again, it's funny. It's funny. I chuckled when they were like, why are you doing this, when they're at the range. I'm like,
It's just, It really is. I don't know. If I was a veteran, I think I'd be insulted by this movie. So, it's just like, I don't know. We have watched, I feel like whenever you've come on, we've watched a war movie. So, I think we watched Sandcastle, which is just
which also sucked.
It sucked. That movie makes such a much greater attempt to be nuanced than this movie does. That movie, there are like, I'm genuinely like, I've heard a lot about this movie being like pro-war, and I thought it would be in the same realm as something like Sandcastle, where it's like, it is, but you could also like, I could see people like watching it and being like, it is an anti-war movie kind of. I do not get that at all from American Sniper. I do not think you can read this as anything but like a very jingoistic pro-war movie. A very poorly made one. I'm shocked also that this was nominated for Best Picture. I think I said that, like, but
I forgot that when I was like, what the fuck were people thinking? Like, again, it really like the swap works. Like, people saw, like, I don't know. People really saw this and were like, this is profound. And
I think everybody
had the American Sniper in it.
You know, we all see a little bit of ourselves in the American Sniper.
We just want to kill kids really
we
bad.
We all play Call of Duty. Oh.
Yeah. Everyone's played Call of Duty. That's why the Academy was like, whoa, Call of Duty, but I don't have to play? Incredible.
It's like, I mean, it's like playing COD, but you have like free auto aim because Chris Kyle, the American Sniper, never misses a shot.
Yeah. After he got through the tutorial, he stopped missing. You know?
It's like the walk song.
would love a Call of Duty game where it's like Call of Duty Chris Kyle edition, and it makes you sit through this whole movie for like the opening credits, and then when
And
you
then
get to the actual game,
you get to
can
play.
just
You get to play the part where he gets killed.
yeah,
That's what it is. Yeah.
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 It's like so it's a movie. It's a cutscene, except for the part where he has to kill the kid. Then it's like you have to shoot.
Yeah.
And then at the end, in the post-credit sequence, you play as the vet with the M1911, and it's like objective, like kill the American sniper. You have to kill him, and it does the slow motion thing. Yeah.
There's a little bonus game where you can just kill as many brown people as you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, thoughts on a final rating for the American Sniper?
What are Brendan? Do you want to start? I think you're the most positive.
I don't know. I'm at like 2 out of 10. The thing is, like, I don't know. I don't want this movie. Like, this movie's bad. It has a lot of bad things. I maybe am trying to give it too much credit for, like, at least attempting to almost go deeper sometimes. Like, it fails. It falls flat every time. It doesn't tactfully deal with anything. But I want to say it at least tried. And also the 9/11 scene is just so funny to me.
That's true. A good comedy, I will say.
Good comedy. The 9/11 scene and the baby are good comedy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. Probably a 2 out of 10. Like, it sucks, but like it's not like complete waste of time, right? There are worse movies out there, right? I'm not gonna give it a 0. And yes, the 9/11 scene was funny. Yeah, I think it's also like, I think art, like the worst kind of art, is the kind that is just forgotten, right? That no one remembers or like is, doesn't care about. Like, I think it's like, if you make art that's memorable in one way or another, that's like worth something, right? And I think American Sniper is like, it's not just like, we'll all remember it because it's a stupid movie with the 9/11 scene, right? But it's also like culturally significant. Like, this, you can look at this movie and you can like see into like the time that it was made. I think that's something true. At the very least, right? Even if it didn't have the scene where Chris Kyle gets killed with a 1911 at the gun range. Right. Joe, thoughts?
I think this is not only the worst war movie I've ever seen. This is just one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's not like a 0, because the very few movies for me are a 0. It is like at least like slightly competent in terms of like shots and everything. But this is so like, it's so one-dimensional. It is so like jingoistic. It is so like very obviously pro-war. I still would definitely call it just like military propaganda. Like, it's literally just U.S. Army propaganda. I would go so far as to say this is one of the most like pro-war, like just like propaganda movies I've ever seen, because I would say, like, I've seen movies like The Patriot, where like that movie is just like, it's so obviously like pro-Revolutionary War, which like, and not in the sense that that's like a terrible thing or whatever, but it's so like patriotic and over the top. But that movie is like goofy. Like, it's silly in how over the top it is with its like like patriotism and like propaganda in a way, like pro-America propaganda, I guess. And also, it's the Revolutionary War, so it's kind of removed from the modern day. But this movie is like, it has like a veneer of like, we're a serious war movie. Like, it's trying to pass itself off as like some sort of deeper, interesting, like morally complex war film, and it's not. And it's almost like insidious because of that to me. Um,
No, I agree, especially also because like when this was made, like we were in Afghanistan still,
yeah,
right? Like people are still doing that shit, and it's like supporting that. It's not like reflecting on something that happened and coming to a conclusion. It's like this shit was like actively happening, and this is almost in a way of like it was like supporting what we were
yeah.
doing there. It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. I could even like honestly, if this movie like did not come out in 2014, like if it was, I mean, it wouldn't be like based on a real person's life or whatever, but like if it came out in like 2006, I could like even like give it slightly more of a pass. But like it was so clear at that point that like it was like the war was like awful and a scam basically.
Mm.
And I just don't understand how it was made. Like you go back and you like watch like The Hurt Locker, and there's like nuance in that movie, and I understand why that won a Best Picture because it's very well made. But like this is just a joke. Like I think this is easily one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's awful. This is a 1 out of 10. Honestly, potentially a 0, but it's a 1 for now.
What it is, yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's a good conclusion. It's a good conclusion to a good episode about an awful movie.
Yeah, this was a fun little discussion, fun little episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. If somehow you made it through this, I don't know when we'll do another episode. We're just gonna go silent for another like year and a half. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.
Bye.